If you're just manifesting because you want to keep the peace, or you want to be perceived by others a certain way, or you want to be validated in a certain way, you're gonna keep chasing your own tail. And you might be in a fawn response. Let's explore how manifesting from a fawn response actually brings you deeper into people pleasing. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support you in bridging the gap between who you currently are or perceive yourself as and who you desire to be or become. This is part 5 of our series on manifestation and the nervous system, in which we've been breaking down all the different survival states and how manifesting from those states can amplify the very trauma responses you're actually trying to heal, and why it's most likely the reason why your attempts to manifest don't fully land, or you're not fully able to maintain what you receive. If you missed the previous videos in which I explained why manifestation can be a trauma response, and we broke down fight, freeze, and flight, check out the link in the description box where you can find the playlist for the whole series. And today we're going to explore the fawn response. The fawn response is a survival state that's all about creating safety within you through avoiding conflict, through people pleasing. When this trauma response kicks in, you're really just trying to create harmony so that there's no threat. It seeks approval and validation from other people, but unfortunately that often comes at your own detriment. And this can be made even worse when you're attempting to manifest something into your life. So we're going to explore how the fawn response impacts your manifestation process, including how being in this response can prevent you from successful manifestation, but also how your attempt to manifest may be rooted in a trauma response in the first place. But I first want to introduce you to what the fawn response is and why it even develops. So first of all, I want to give you a bit of a perspective shift, because there is a lot of negative messaging going around about being a people pleaser. Nobody wants to be a people pleaser, right? But we also should acknowledge the fawn response for what it is, which is a survival mechanism. It's not inherently bad. It protects you from threats, and it can do it very well. Now, in the previous videos, we used the example of being chased by a tiger to illustrate the different survival responses. So we're going to continue with this, although for the fawn response, it wouldn't work well with a tiger, because what you're doing when you're in fawn and you're being chased by a predator is that you just do, or you pretend to do, what the predator wants you to do. Now, from a survival perspective, this is actually really smart, because you gain the predator's trust, which then allows you to act from that place. It's more or less just people pleasing. Now, the problem with this is twofold. When your nervous system gets used to going into this survival mechanism, you often don't really get out of it anymore. And it works well when it happens consciously, but sometimes this response can become completely unconscious and really not needed, in which case it does more harm than good. And I will get to why that is and what happens a bit later. The other issue is that obvious threats like a tiger, a predator, or maybe an abuser that you can't run from, that's one thing. But when you're in fawn, when you're in a state of people pleasing, and when that's your go-to state, you might do this every time you experience discomfort or you get a little bit anxious or worried or scared. Well, now we can get into really tricky situations where you don't set boundaries, you let people walk all over you. You let people treat you badly or take advantage of you. So maybe you say yes when you really want to say no. Or you are a doormat for your partner. You let them do whatever they want, and then you call that unconditional love. Or maybe you agree with someone just to keep the peace, even though you don't really mean it. Now, let me know in the comments if you've ever found yourself in any of these responses, if you've ever done anything like this, because I sure know I have. I used to have a very big fawn response, which took me a hot minute to heal. People-pleasing is about the nervous system, right? The fawn response, it impacts the nervous system. It comes from the nervous system. It's a nervous system state. But not just that, there's also a lot of attachment work and subconscious shadow integration that needs to be done. That is all part of the process that I move my clients through in Recreate Yourself. It goes very deep. There's a lot of reprogramming that needs to happen, especially for the fawn response, because it can be super subtle. It's actually a very tricky state to move out of because it can be very covert. It's not very obvious when someone is agreeable to determine whether they actually mean it. Are they fawning or are they genuinely agreeing? I am often able to tell because I am trained in the subtleties that it takes to recognize whether someone is in this state. And I actually have a lot of clients who struggle with being in a fawn response, especially chronically or frequently. Changing your self-concept is all about empowerment. So this work tends to be perfect for you when you have a tendency to give your power away, when you maybe self-abandon or people please. Let's do a bit of a deeper dive into the characteristics of a fawn response. I already gave you a bit of an idea and examples of how this can show up. But before we connect it to manifestation, we need to get a bit more clarity and go a bit deeper so that you can recognize whether you yourself are in this state or are in this state frequently. So since fawn is associated with people pleasing in order to avoid conflict or discomfort, one of the primary indicators is that you most likely have difficulty speaking up or asserting yourself. Maybe you struggle to set boundaries, like I said, or you might not state your needs. And sometimes you don't even know what they are. The fawn response is not just covert for other people, but often you don't even know. And sometimes you don't even question what it is that you want. So that could lead to you having difficulty making decisions in general. Your behavior might be a little bit more passive and you might just go along with what someone else says, especially if they are quite dominant or clear in their needs or desires, or if they're in a fight response. And it's also possible that you seek approval or validation from others and that you struggle with your self-worth. There can even be a lack of a sense of self. And also other people's judgments or opinions likely impact you a lot, because you consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally, listen more to their opinions than your own. Now let's connect this to manifestation, starting with why does somebody in a fawn response even seek out manifestation? Because that tells us a lot about the success that a manifestation will have, the state you're doing it from. Now, since the desire to be validated in order to feel safe, in order to feel secure, is so strong in a fawn response, and there is often anxious attachment as an attachment style. Let me know if you want a video on this, by the way, on attachments. I could do a whole series on attachment patterns and manifestation as well. But the whole trend in the manifestation community of manifesting somebody specific, that will really speak to someone who is in a fawn or people-pleasing response. Because receiving validation, receiving approval makes them feel safe. So the ability to manifest someone seems like the ideal way to control. Because you feel out of control. You don't have power over your state when you're in a fawn response. Why? Because your state, the way that you feel, who you are, it's all dependent on other people. So you want to please others so that you can feel loved, because that's how you think that you get love. When a client comes to me and they are really deep in a fawn response, like really caught up in it, and I ask them what it is that they desire, they might say something like, well, I want so-and-so to love me, or I want nobody to think badly of me, or I want everyone to think I'm amazing. Their desire tends to be about other people's perceptions of them. Changing your self-concept is not about changing other people's perception of you. It's about changing your own perception of you, which usually does impact how other people perceive you because of what you exude, because of the state that you're in, because of the embodiment. But if other people's perceptions are the goal for you, you're probably just in a fawn response. And manifesting a specific person, for example, also often speaks to someone in a fawn response because, as I said, they have difficulty speaking up for themselves, setting boundaries, stating their needs. So they also tend to feel small and not in power. So the possibility to just manifest fame or success or love or validation or anything else that represents not being in that identity of smallness anymore can feel empowering. The problem is that manifestation amplifies who you already are, so it doesn't actually solve the issue. Therefore, what actually happens is that manifesting from a fawn response actually amplifies the fawn response. So if you're manifesting from a state where you're used to people pleasing, you're actually just amplifying that very behavior and the feeling inside of you. Now, why is that? because you are still seeking validation and success through external means. Circumstances, recognition, or other people's approval. And man, I get it, because I used to be exactly like this. That was the whole reason I even embarked on a manifestation journey myself. I wanted to be loved, I wanted to be liked, but it only kept me trapped in the same cycle until I broke free from it, until I actually managed to transform my self-concept. And I'll talk more about what it takes to manifest without re-traumatizing yourself and manifest from an integrated self-concept next week. So make sure you subscribe if you want to receive a notification for the next video. And also, I have a free masterclass called Liberate. You can sign up to receive the replay. It's linked below, because this is a masterclass which is all about releasing attachment so that you can manifest from an empowered place, which is something that someone in a fawn or people-pleasing response really needs to learn. So if what I'm saying here speaks to you, you might want to check out this masterclass. But there's a reason my focus of the work that I do with clients is about a really solid and sustained self-concept rather than external manifestation. There's a reason I stepped away from teaching manifestation, because when clients finish Recreate Yourself, the real success is not about the external results. Now, it's always awesome when they finally end up in the relationship that they've been desiring, or they receive the recognition at work that they haven't had for years. But what the real success is for me is when they feel so empowered in who they are and they stop giving a fuck about what other people think of them. Because when you're not in that place and you chase others or you seek validation through others, especially by attempting to manifest something or someone, it just reaffirms the people-pleasing pattern that you already have. The pattern that already makes you feel powerless to external circumstances or to other people. And this energy or this pattern of actually giving your power away can also lead you to seek out very unhealthy manifestation content. We know there's a lot of bullshit out there, and it can keep you dependent, almost like an addiction, on watching an abundance of videos that makes you see coaches as gurus. So you're then prone to being very manipulated by people who might not always mean well. I did a video series a while ago about the question, is the manifestation community a cult? Which goes very deep into these toxic and unhealthy techniques and messages. And the other thing that happens is that it diminishes your ethical values. Because something that I mentioned in one of the videos of this series is the ethical implications of manifestation, especially when it comes to manifesting a specific person. Because deep down, a part of you knows that controlling another person or manipulating another person isn't okay. Especially when you're in a fawn or people-pleasing response, because when you're in this state, you are essentially being controlled. You are being controlled by your own trauma response, and you're letting yourself be controlled by other people. Now, that's all for your survival, for your safety, even though it's sometimes harmful, but you know what it feels like to be walked all over. And yet, that's what you're taught to do to other people. It's subtle, but it's there. Now, why is this bad? What are the downsides of this? I'm sure you can already see some. It doesn't feel great to be in this state. But when we connect this to manifestation, when you're manifesting from a fawn response and you go deeper into the state of fawn, it often makes things even worse, because manifesting your desires shouldn't decrease your self-worth. Yet, that's the exact thing that tends to happen when you do it from a fawn or people-pleasing response. Because there's then always this underlying energy of trying to prove something, of needing to be liked, of needing to be validated. It also creates guilt and shame. Honestly, just being in a fawn response on its own can create guilt and shame, because you're essentially self-abandoning. And there are parts of you that know that you're doing this. And the thing is that trying to manifest from a fawn response can lead to either manipulation, so that's manipulating other people, manipulating circumstances, manipulating your reality, or it leads to powerlessness. And both of these create a sense of shame in your self-concept and your identity. And due to this need for validation that you have when you're in a fawn response, when your manifestation is then not working, or not working fast enough, or you're getting triggered by something, it can feel like you're not doing it right. Now that perpetuates the cycle of feeling ashamed or feeling like you're not worthy. It also creates further unresolved emotions. Why? Because it brings up resentment. What I often see in clients when they want to work on their self-concept, or they apply manifestation techniques, or they even work on loving themselves more deeply, it tends to serve as a means to an end. And that can create a sense of entitlement. Like, I'm doing all this work to manifest, I deserve to have this, why is it not here? Or I give everything to my partner, to my lover, to my specific person, I should expect the exact same in return. But the truth is, people don't owe you. And so when it then doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen fast enough, it creates resentment. And that goes round and round, and it creates more and more emotional charges. And finally, an issue is that when you're manifesting from a fawn response and that all gets amplified, you're really out of integrity with your authentic self, right? You're self-abandoning. You're doing things for other people, or to get something, or to feel a certain way, or to be treated a certain way. The fawn response is probably the most manipulative nervous system state. And it sounds so mean because it's just a survival state, it's not your fault. But there is some manipulation that is going on here. But it's important to say because it just doesn't work. For manifestation to work and to be sustainable and to be successful, it needs to be authentic. You need to be authentic. So if you're self-abandoning, if you're prioritizing other people's needs above your own, you're not in alignment with that. So it's an interesting state that you have to work with and heal. And I think a lot of coaches in the self-concept and manifestation world especially just don't recognize when their clients are in a fawn response. And that's then why the techniques or the methods that they teach don't fully work. It can manifest in such subtle ways. And if someone doesn't know how to support you through this, you can continue chasing your own tail. Let me know if you're resonating with this fawn or people-pleasing response. If you do resonate, let me know in what ways you've been noticing it showing up in your life or in your manifestation process. I do help a lot of clients with this so that they can really step into their power and embrace their authentic self, own their needs and their desires unapologetically. Because when you are able to heal this and you show up as your most confident, magnetic, and empowered self, you can create a reality that's really aligned with what you want. So if you realize how much fawning has shaped your life and you want to heal this and you want to change your self-concept and your habitual state of being, then you can check out my coaching program, Recreate Yourself, because that's where I help you shift out of these patterns, integrate and embody a new self-concept, and actually become the version of you that doesn't have to chase or overgive or prove yourself to get what you want. So in next week's video, we're going to dive into what to do from here now that you have an overview of all the nervous system states and how they interplay with manifestation. Be sure to subscribe and check in next week for the next video.